This one, I'm probably going to make some of you upset. I hope to make everybody upset by the end. So that it's equal and fair treatment for you. But we're on the sermon topic. It's good work. And so far, we've talked about the fact that God has designed you uniquely to do some type of work. He's planned them ahead of time for you. And then we also talked about the fact that everything that you put your hand to can be worship. So it doesn't have to be just if you have a 9-to-5 job or any type of vocational career. It can be the fact that you're going and doing gardening. It's cleaning your house. It's making a meal for someone. All that kind of stuff is work, and you can use that as an act of worship. So just a couple highlights here that I put on a bullet point here. God has prepared good works for us and wants us to use our unique gifts to complete those works. Second, our work is an opportunity to worship God. And then the third one is our work isn't only to worship God, but to serve others. That's where we're going to get today. So when I was preparing for this, I like to look at stats and different surveys. So this is from an article called Making Noise for Quiet Quitting. That's a study that was done this year. Out of everybody that responded, 85% would say that they worked more than officially required. So this may be that you have a job description in your requirements. 85% said that I went further than what my job description. So maybe that means you went extra hours, you took on extra tasks, that kind of stuff. We're going to talk about going above and beyond. But what is interesting is that if 85% said that they worked more than officially required, where does our Christian work ethic come into play with this? What is Christian work ethic? So we're going to look at Matthew 5:41 as our main verse. I'm going to come back to this, but just so you know where kind of the main idea is coming from, it's Matthew 5:41. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. And to give you a little bit of perspective of where this is also used in the New Testament, if you remember, there was Simon who was forced to carry Jesus' cross. Jesus at this point had basically been beaten and was struggling to the point that he couldn't carry his cross anymore. And the Bible says that the soldiers called out for Simon to come help carry that cross. I'm going to play the video for this real quick. So Alan, if the sound would be on for the video, I'll play this real quick. Low graphic. Also in another language, but they're subtitles.
Bobby! 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 Ceci estis? Videre non potestis? Quodiste homo procedere sicut hoc non potest? Iuvateum. أنت هيتا تو أنت هالكا ما بقاخ مني
قبل بنام لا حلل من سفر تهزره شيء
ليك خودي تشعر إبراقها هي لادي بغثيش شولا خران هبوط زمان ها هياموس ودكورو دينا زكو وإن ساتسلافا دينا شميثرشا تيبوثنا قويه اللي ما دفرات المحصول
عسره هذا
عسره هياموس
So this verse is the same context that that was used for Simon when he was told to carry Jesus' cross. And I don't know if you could read the subtitles, but what he was saying is that he wanted to make sure the crowd knew he was an innocent man. I shouldn't have to do this, but the guards were forcing him to. And what Matthew 5:41 says is, if somebody forces you to go 1 mile, go 2. That's the Christian work ethic. That's what Jesus is calling us to do and how we should view work. Maybe you're in a situation that's just like Simon where, you know what, those guards were not nice, those guards were very angry, and those guards were making you do something that you shouldn't have to do. This verse is saying, even in a case like that, if they tell you to go 1, go 2. All right, here's where I might make some people upset. But like I said, equal opportunity, try to make sure everybody's upset by the time I'm done. Are you pro or anti-union? Wow. What does this have to do with the Bible? All right, so give you a little bit of background of my work career and also my dad. Because I know that here's where I gotta kind of watch what I say, because I know a lot of you are in unions, okay? And there's pros and cons to being in a union. But Christian work ethic. All right, let's talk about this for a second. So, growing up, my dad was a mechanic. And if you are aware of how they operate, especially in a dealership, the mechanic basically doesn't get paid unless he does work. Unless he completes a job, that's when he gets paid. The faster he does that job, the more he can get paid because he can get another job. And so I thought I wanted to be a mechanic. Found out after a few years that I wasn't that good at it. But I tried to be a mechanic as well, and I got put into what's called a flat rate system. Flat rate, again, is where you just get paid for the amount of work that you do. Also, if you have a comeback, which is where you've messed up, you have to do that for free. So it has to be quality work and fast. That's how you get paid a lot of money. Here's what would typically happen. You clock in, you go to your computer, type in your number, it automatically brings in your next job. And once you finish that job, you type in what you did and click finish, it'll bring you your next job. So my whole day consisted of, okay, how fast can I complete this job and get on to the next one, yet keeping my quality where it needs to be, because I don't want to have to redo my work. And that was the mindset. It was always fast and good. And that's what my dad grew up in as well. That's basically from the time he was out of college, so probably 20 years old, I'm thinking is what he went into the workforce. For probably 25 years, doing the same kind of work and kind of environment where it's all day, every day, is how fast can you do the work, because that's how you make more money. You got a job at the post office. Post office, union job. He still has the same mindset. And if you've ever met my dad, he's kind of wiry. Like, you would think he's on like loads of caffeine, but he's not. He's just like, he can't sit still. He's one of those guys. He always has to be doing something. If you were to go to his house on a random Tuesday evening, 8 o'clock, he's probably still out in the garage doing something. Even though it's just him and mom at home, he's working. So he gets a job at the post office, and again, still has the same mindset, and he begins to outwork his other co-workers. This goes on for a little while. Those co-workers begin to get upset with him because he's setting a bar a little higher than what they're comfortable with. And then his numbers start to show that, wow, in an 8-hour day, he got a lot more done than anybody else. But then the boss, once you start to raise those standards, it becomes expected. Well, if this guy can do it, then why can't everybody else? And the workplace atmosphere was no longer as good as it was before, because you have this guy coming in and kind of ruining everything that these other people have kind of put into place and they're used to. So the boss wasn't too happy about that either, because now he has to make sure all of his other employees are trying to keep up with my dad. So my dad became the enemy. Like, we got to get rid of him. And eventually he resigned and went back to a different job where he's actually hourly now, but not in the same situation. So here's where I ask you, are you pro or anti-union? What does this have to do? And I don't want you to focus so much on the political part of it. So just stick with me. Wait to hear me out before you get upset. Why were unions created? Irv and I talked about this morning outside. They were created for good reasons. They were created because work environments were terrible, requirements were just too much. They were unsafe. People would get fired for no reason. So the employees got together and found a way to join, and they called it a union. They started actually in the 1700s was the very first one. But throughout the 1800s, they grew and became more popular. And then especially in hard times, so you think of the World Wars and Great Depression, unions gained a lot of popularity, again, for good reasons. What are those reasons? Some of it's collective bargaining. The fact that you could, as a large group, say we need better this or that. Maybe it's they need safer work conditions. So they could, as a group, say we need to have these type of standards to work in. Maybe reasonable work hours, that the employers were requiring too many hours in a day and it was just too much. Equality and fair treatment, and job security. Those are good reasons. Now, here's some of the stereotypes of a person who likes unions. They're stereotypes. So if you're in a union, I'm not saying this is you, okay? Which I believe it's around 10% of all adults are in a union. Here's some stereotypes. Job security. It's in the other category. But why would a union worker stereotypically like job security? Maybe they could get away with certain things. Maybe they could not work as hard and not get fired. And then also seniority over performance. Probably one of the worst parts about a union is that they do prefer seniority over performance. So if you have a young gun who's ready to work, wants to do a lot of stuff, and then compares that to the person closer to retirement, wants to slow down, they will promote seniority over performance, even if somebody does a good job, has good work ethic. It also creates a resistance to authority. So typically, there's a line at some point in the employment structure where you have employees who are part of a union, and then you have managers, supervisors who work for the company, and there's conflict there. And the employees just see those who are above them as people who are the enemy. Maybe there's harsh work conditions, something like that, and they just think that they're the problem and they need to go to their authorities, the union, to fight for them. But then also entitlement. There's a stereotype that if you're a part of a union, that you just deserve to have whatever it is because of the fact that you're a part of it. Those are stereotypes. And I hope that's not you, because a lot of those things don't line up with the Christian lifestyle and work ethic. So tell me about a time when you went above and beyond. I'm not actually saying tell me about it right now, but think about it. In your work career so far, how many times have you went above and beyond? So here's where that mentality that unfortunately sometimes unions put in place is that if you go above and beyond, maybe it could be like my dad, to where now that's expected of everybody else because you've shown that it can be done, or you try to go above and beyond and you end up doing somebody else's job and now they're mad at you. But just tell me about a time, think in your mind, when you went above and beyond. You knew that there was somebody struggling to complete a project, so you had the ability and you hopped in and helped them complete whatever their project was because they were just so busy. I don't know the names, but Cassie has told me several times where the way their scheduling works in physical therapy is that there are times when the physical therapy assistants and the therapists themselves are double booked. So like they may be double booked all day, yet their coworker, had 3 or 4 cancellations. Some people, if they get cancellations, will see, oh man, my coworker's double booked all day. I should try to see if I can help them out and take some of their patients to kind of free up a little bit of their time. But there's some people who do that, and there's some people who don't. There's some people who are like, wow, I got my free time, I'm going to enjoy this, while my coworker is slaving to death because they somehow got double booked. So is there a time in your life that you can remember going above and beyond? Because the Christian principle, again, is to, if they ask you to go 1 mile, go 2. Take it that far. That's what we should be trying to do, looking for opportunities to do that. Is there anything you can remember? So I want you to think about that even after you leave here. So when I was looking and doing research, Indeed.com, which is basically you can go to Indeed, fill out a resume, look for jobs, that kind of stuff. They have a section for career advice, and their career advice about this topic of if they ask you to go 1 mile, go 2, so to go above and beyond. Here are some of the quotes that they have from people on their job applications were required to answer that question. So they're applying for a job, and the people who are hiring them want to know, tell me about a time that you've went above and beyond. So it says, on the left side, it says, this is not required by my company or supervisor, but I think going above and beyond our customers' expectations by keeping in touch with them helps to build lasting relationships that keep the clients loyal to our business. So maybe some of you are in a customer service role, or maybe something where you're interacting with clients. Like, that's a suggestion. Maybe you think about that. What ways can you actually make it better for your client to help keep them loyal to your business? And the next one on the right says, a couple of months ago, I noticed my manager didn't complete most of the staff schedules for the following week. I know that can be struggle if you have a manager who doesn't communicate and do stuff that you need to know. But it says, my manager normally completes them on time, but he had been working on several other urgent projects. So rather than to add to his burden by complaining, I offered to help him with some of his workload so he could complete the schedule. Have you ever asked somebody, hey, I've got a little bit of free time, how can I help you? What can I do to make your job easier because I see you overworking. I see you, your workload is too much right now, you can't handle it, how can I help you out? A little bit of an illustration, when I worked at Baker's Collision, which, by the way, if you ever need collision work, best place in town. Well, not, I guess, in the county. In the office where I worked, there's only 3 of us. And if somebody's on vacation, it usually meant the other 2 were extra busy that week. And there was times where I was pretty busy. I was doing double the amount of estimates, double the amount of customers for the week. But I had a coworker, her name was Robin. Robin was a great coworker. She was the type of person who would notice that she knew ahead of time that if Chris, my buddy who worked beside me, if he's on vacation, she knew that she was going to have to ask at times, hey, what can I help you with? What phone calls can I make for you? What paperwork can I help you with? One is, man, I so appreciated that because I knew I was going to be busy that week. I was stressed out. I was trying to make sure I got it all done in a decent amount of time so I could get home. But Robin was great. And I don't know if she'll ever hear this message, but even to this day, I still look back and thank God for the times where she would turn around, look at me, and I'm just like, working away or making phone calls or on the phone while I'm typing, doing all this stuff. And she'd come back and say, hey, I'm going to get a drink. Do you want a Dr. Pepper? Yes, absolutely. Give me a Dr. Pepper because I don't have time to go get it right now. But she noticed those things. And that's how we should behave, and that's how we should look as well. As if our coworkers are behind, if there's a way we can assist people, that's a way we can go the extra mile. Now, I'm using illustrations from work, a vocational career. That applies in all types of different parts of your life, though. So maybe you're retired. I know some of you are. And you're like, well, I don't go to work every day. But here's what I do know. I know that some of you feel very called that you're supposed to serve certain people. There's certain people that you're neighbors with. You love them, and you find ways to serve them. We have a Wednesday study group at 10 a.m. Here at the church to basically discuss the sermon for the week. And typically, Ray and Jane Bond, they're here almost every week. But Ray and Jane, we talk a lot about your neighbors, right? I'm not going to call them out by name. Actually, I don't even know their names. But they always share stories about things that they can do to go above and beyond to make connections with the children that are next door. Ray even tried to hula hoop with them, right? Yeah. And to hear Jane describe it is great. I love the way she describes that. But instead of just being the old people next door, which I'm not calling you old, I'm just saying that's probably what the kids call you. But instead of just being the old people that sit on their porch, man, they're going above and beyond by buying them pizza every once in a while, getting some Tinker toys for them, that kind of stuff. That's going above and beyond what you have to do. Nobody's forcing them to do that. But that Christian principle of, I don't have to do this, but I'm going to. That's what we should be doing. And that's some career advice as well. So that main verse, again, that was Matthew 5:41. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. That same principle applies even if you're not forced to do it. We should be looking for opportunities to go above and beyond. So let's go to Philippians chapter 2. We're going to look at 2 verses, Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. And it won't take us a whole long to get through this, but it shows us some of the remedy for it. So Philippians 2, verse 3a, this is what we can get from this, and I'm going to pull the verse up here in just a second. But that selfish ambition was the spiritual illness of the church of Philippi. So when the verse I'm getting ready to put up on the screen, when it says selfish ambition, it's that you're only concerned about yourself. You're only concerned about what you're responsible for. And maybe you answer that 85% that I do go above and beyond, but maybe you're a part of the 85% and say, I only go above and beyond what I have to do. Maybe it doesn't mean that you go above and beyond to help your coworker, to help your boss, to help your neighbor, to help the kids next door. You only do it, maybe, to benefit yourself, that you would look like a good worker or something like that. So for this church that they're writing to, selfish ambition was the illness of that church, and that is what he's trying to address and say, hey, you've done this out of selfish ambition. That needs to be corrected because you're only worried about yourself. And that verse says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or conceit. Again, the context here is the church. And sometimes that happens in church as well. All we're concerned with is how does that benefit me? Or how does this thing that happens at the church, how is that going to affect my spiritual life or my routine or something like that? It's out of selfish ambition. When we think of the whole context of, wow, this is a church family, how does that affect the church family? That's what he's saying that we should be doing. We shouldn't just be worried about us. So what's the remedy for it? We get the remedy in the next part of this verse. And verse 4 is the remedy for it is to practice humility. Sometimes we are forced to practice humility for situations that may pop up, and we're just humbled. That's good. This verse says this, but in humility, consider others as more important than yourselves. Everyone should look not to his own interest, but rather to the interest of other people. Is that what we do typically? Some of you, I can say yes. That is a general practice of that person because I've seen their life play out, and that's the type of person they are, that they are usually looking for a way they can serve somebody else. I'm very thankful for those of you who practice that. And sometimes you show that to my family and myself. You ask, hey, what can I help you with? And sometimes I say no, or not no, but hey, nothing right now. But even just the offer, it means a lot. So in humility, consider others more important than yourselves. Everyone should look not to his own interest, but rather to the interest of others. So when preparing for marriage, during marriage counseling, premarital counseling, this is one of the most important things to know before going into a marriage is that you should view your spouse as I'm here to serve them. We usually think of the triggering verses where it's like, wives, submit to your husbands. And then we forget about the part where the husband should submit to wives as well. But really, if you boil it all down, it's that both of us should be looking to serve the other in everything that we do. Now, that's a marriage example, but that should apply in your life as well. Are you looking for ways to serve other people? Not to just do it for what's in it for you. Maybe you get nothing out of it. But how can you serve other people? We should look to other people's interests, not just our own. 1 Peter chapter 4 is we'll have our last verse here, 2 verses. We've talked about the fact that God made you a certain way. He's given you certain gifts, opportunities, the path that He's put you on for a reason. So God's rule for those gifts that we've got is that we should use them. So don't let them just be dormant. If you know that God has the ability to do something with your life, you should practice and take part of that, but also use them for God's glory. Now, obviously, the context in your life is going to be different than mine. Some of you are working in a finance world that I have no idea about any of that stuff, but God wants to do something in your life, in your profession, in your career, your home, but He also wants you to do it for His glory. There is a chance that God has gifted you for something and you've excelled at it and you never gave God glory for any of it, or it's benefited your life and you never even gave Him an opportunity to take you even further, possibly. But we're all gifted in some way. God wants us to use them and use them for His glory. The verse says this: just as each one has received a gift, so it's an understanding that all of us have received a gift, use it to serve other people. Don't use it just to benefit yourself. As good stewards of the varied grace of God, if anyone speaks, let it be as one who speaks God's words. If anyone serves, let it be from the strength that God provides, so that God may be glorified through Jesus Christ in everything. To Him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. I love when I hear stories of where it's been kind of a God-ordained event in somebody's life, and maybe somebody even praises them and say, wow, like, thank you so much for doing that. And the response is, that's just God working through me. That's it. And that's how really it is. God wants to work through us to bring the good news of Jesus to the world. God's gifted you. It's up to you. Are you going to let that be a part? Are you going to let God use it for His glory? So here's my challenge to you. And then we're going to invite the kids in. So I don't know if Whitney can hear me or where she's at. There you go, Josh. We'll bring the kids in here in just a minute. But my challenge for you, encouragement, is to prayerfully consider how you can be a humble and grateful worker this week. Did Simon have to carry that cross? Yeah, he was forced to by the guards. But after he began to carry that cross, really the scene kind of unfolded that, wow, this is an innocent man that physically can't do this. And He carried the cross for him. He was humbled. And this says also that this may mean that you have to step outside of your comfort zone. So I can't believe Jerry was ever shy at one point, but at some point he must have stepped out of his comfort zone because he is not shy anymore. But it may mean for you that you need to step out of your comfort zone to bless and serve other people. And that could be by offering to help a coworker in a project with no strings attached. It could mean sending a handwritten card or note to show appreciation for somebody that's done a job well done. It could mean that you're going to buy coffee or lunch for someone who's feeling blue, or offering to pray for someone who is struggling with a life crisis. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. I realize the topic is good work, and the temptation is just to say that only applies to people who have a vocational career, but it's not. Every single one of you, again, I say this often, but if you're breathing today, God has a reason for you to breathe, and He wants you to do something for Him. So it's up to you, though. Are you going to allow God to use that to bless other people, to bless and serve them.